All right, and we are live. My apologies to everyone. This is super late. I have an excuse. I always have an excuse. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. I don't know. But tonight, I was putting the kids to bed, and my little guy, my little 2-year-old, he starts complaining about his foot. And I checked it out, and he had this giant splinter in his foot. And so we get to work trying to help him with that. But truth be told, that was beyond my level. So we called the medical professionals in our lives and got the other kids in bed, and my wife just took him off. I just got him loaded up. So hopefully they can get that removed from his foot. Poor little dude. So, yep, that took precedent over the live stream, and I apologize for being late, but I'm not going to apologize for prioritizing my children. I think that's the right thing to do. The poor little dude, he's been playing outside all day, just having a grand old time. And we took the other kids to their Little League game. They had a little game today. And anyway, he was given just a little bit of a limp, and I asked him, I'm like, hey, you okay there, buddy? Looks like you're limping. And you'd have to know the kid, but he's just like, no thing. Oh yeah, I'm limping. So he gave me no indication just how badly he was hurt. So once we got that shoe off and looked at it, anyway, we'll spare you the details, but more parenting moments. Okay, so tonight I am finally going to do something about, I've said this at least twice, that I want to do these, I think these are power plants. And I like the accuracy of everything. Everything's got these, specific geometric shapes. There's hard edges, but then there's also these nice, curvilinear forms. And I've kept saying that I'm going to do these, and then I haven't. So I did these ones over here. Did this one in a previous stream, and this one. But now I'm going to see if I can address these. So I was looking at this one here. On the bottom, it's got an interesting kind of blue stripe there. But you also got those kind of atmospherics with the smoke and that sort of thing. Or steam, I guess that would be. So yeah, that's what we're going to try to tackle tonight. And I normally wouldn't do this, but I am going to check that because, because of the story that I just told you. All right, I think we're all set. Okay, so I guess I'm starting this with just a kind of a loose block end, and I'm tempted to get the lasso tool out, but I think I'm going to delay that as much as possible, just to get some kind of life and rhythm to this thing before I try to get really tight with it. I don't want to start off trying to have these really nice tight details when the gesture is going to be, with the gesture and the composition of how things flow through the image is going to be much more important. So, blocking in some of the darker areas, we've got like a shadow shape over here, and kind of coincides with, this is actually kind of interesting. This is one of these weird, simple pleasures with painting, is that often you'll see these shapes that kind of switch roles from light to dark, depending on where they fall in the image. So the simplest way to illustrate that would be if you follow a line, you know, say you get a line like this, and then, you know, on the other side of it, maybe it's bright like that, you know. And you would see that in different lighting conditions, right? So if like this were obscured by light, or if we flip this over and that were evening light, then that would imply that the sun is low, right? So if we take this, flip it like so, right? So then it would imply like sun's over here, maybe this structure is blocking the light here, and then you get light above it. So it's shadow on the bottom, light on the top. And I know this is like maybe kind of silly, but like I just love that. That's like my favorite thing. When you have the same form, but kind of a different value play. So what's happening here is you got this like it looks like a ladder, and then there's like these little platforms. So each of these things here is actually a platform, and so there's like little rails there and stuff. This is massive scale here. But then as you come down into this shadow area, they actually are kind of the lighter shapes in there. And I don't know, I'm telling you, I love it. It's my jam. It's my favorite thing. Okay, so I'm going to smooth that out a little bit. Get this shape here. And we'll pick it back up again. Looks like it's got these little cutouts there. Same thing here. It's like they're cut out like that. Okay, I don't want to get too lost in the weeds there, but I wanted to show you that because I was excited about it. So, all right, we'll get this a little smoother blend here on this shape. Bring that up. One of the nice things about this reference too is that even the atmospherics are casting shadows onto the form, which is nice. Nice little fun subject to paint. Okay, and I'm actually just going to bring this over. I'm going to paint over all of that just to get the forms right. All right, so I do have an eye on the chat tonight. If anyone is interested, wants to throw some questions or anything in there, I'll keep an eye on that. Again, I can feel myself getting a little bit tight here, so I want to make sure that I'm looking at the major shapes and not getting too bogged down. Let's see, this down here actually can get quite a bit darker there. There's like a nice nice long line here, and then we've got these kind of mid shadows in here. Let's see, even these, well, yeah, I guess they're okay. Just thinking about lightening these up a little bit, but I think we'll blend it a little bit, like we'll get it lighter near the bottom so that it's more like bounce light, and then I think we can bring in some direct sunlight on some of these areas. And I am really tempted to just go in there and sharpen all these up, get them really crisp and everything, but I don't know. I don't, you know, it's never really been my strength, I don't think. I like the looseness. Maybe I need to work on that a bit more, but I feel like keeping it loose is going to pay off in the end, rather than trying to get in here and get all these shapes, you know, absolutely perfect. Okay, we'll go a little bit darker here. I get more kind of ambient inclusion in here, these areas where light is just not really getting into it. And that's actually kind of what's going on back here, I was talking about before. See, with these structures being so bright, they reflect a lot of that light around, so it bounces around. You get a lot of bounce in there. How many times can this guy say bounce in 30 seconds? That's light just bouncing around, bouncing. Okay. All right. Okay. One of the nice things too, and I might do this on a separate layer to keep things clean. I don't know. Is that your cast shadows have these nice, even though you have this nice bounce light, you get these cast shadows that make it really easy to kind of follow across the form. So like right now, we're doing these major form shadows. You could think of it kind of like, you know, lighting an egg or something like that, you know. But when you do a cast shadow, it's usually pretty hard and keeps that same luminosity throughout. And what ends up happening is, okay, let me say that again. It keeps the same light value, unless you have like bounce light coming into it, but it doesn't like turn the form necessarily. So let me give you an example of this. Right here, where I've got this this light here, it's turning the form and it's blending from the light side to this shadow side. But if I just take that shadow side and I put it right here and I cast a shadow, you can cast it right into that until it disappears into your shadow side. See, that's the same value here as it is here. Now that, of course, this thing is in the way, but let's maybe do it down here. Okay, and then we'll blend this, make it a little more there, and then we can just put an object here, maybe like that. Put one here, and then bring in the light again to block that area there. All right, so you can see how that you take that same value and then you carry it right into the part that gets that gets darker and into shadow as it turns the form. So a cast shadow is blocking the light, just like, you know, being on the back side of the form you would be in blocked light. So there's no like kind of in between, if that makes sense. As long as you have a hard light. Okay, I'm going to go back because those actually aren't the forms that I wanted to do. So I'm looking at the chat, and Benjamin says gas tanks. That's brilliant. We should make gas tanks. There are all kinds of opportunities for tanks. There are fish tanks, gas tanks. What other kind of tanks are out there? You know what? I say there's all kinds of opportunities, and then I just completely space out on it. But almost anything can be a tank, in my mind. Maybe that's a problem. Alright, so we're coming in with those cast shadows, just like I had said. So now we can bring in these hard shapes, and we just take that shadow value and just carry it wherever we need it. Right. So if this little area is in shadow, do that. If there's like say there's like an overhang here or something, so like that's in shadow, and all this is in shadow here. I should actually blend that one a little better. And then if there's like a little area on top. There's like a platform on this. There, so put that there. Anywhere we have a cast shadow, we can just jump right in with that. Let's see. What do we got here? We got this kind of comes. There's like these little supports here on this thing. Not sure how much I like that. It really makes the image more complex than I care for it to be. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. So bring a shadow in here and some here. Got a whole bunch of things going on over here. And all of these are casting shadows this way. So you get a lot of information from these, like where the shadow casts, and then also how it's cut off. It tells you a lot about the form. So if there's a, so let's say on this one, let me just go hit X. Actually, instead of that, I will just remove them. I'll just delete them with a lasso tool. So that is where we will get into the lasso, because I think that would be a smarter way to do it, because then we can kind of repaint anything underneath it that needs to be done. All right, let's see here. We've got another kind of looks like a little catwalk type thing here. Okay, and then there's more of these like little landings, like so. And what else do we need? There's a landing here on this guy, and we'll go ahead and carry that right on down. We kind of want these to get lost a little bit. That's kind of the idea. These shadows are nice and hard on this one side, and then they get lost when they turn the form. Okay. And actually, most of this area here is in shadow as well. Here I said I wasn't going to get all tight. And that's exactly what we're doing. Okay, got some little forms up here. And there's more going on here. Now that I compare those two areas together, this is like the there's like a big pipe that comes up and then terminates at the top. Okay. This form here is not quite right. This needs to be a little more gradual of a curve here. Like that. Actually needs to disappear there. And then we'll bring this little catwalk thing over. Do that again. Okay, this one up here, this, I think this just gives the wrong impression. It looks like a really thick, sloppily done railing. It's actually not what's going on there. It's like it's like this area right here is the cast shadow. So there's this like catwalk that goes across here. Then there's a cast shadow coming off of it, and there's a little bit of a gap between that and the structure, and it's kind of held up there. And then there is a tiny little rail, up above it. There's more rail type things going on here. And over here, make those a little smaller. There we go. And there's, it's almost like these little cages. It's amazing the things we do to keep people safe, and I'm all for that, safe working conditions and everything. But then they end up being like these just crazy like cage contraptions. There's almost like an irony to it that like it becomes more complex and precarious looking because we're trying to make it safer. I had this dream once so I worked at Schweitzer. Well, it was okay. So it was a aircraft company that was being purchased by another aircraft company. So Schweitzer was one of the names that it went by, but It was also called. It was owned by Sikorsky, and so we had these like big metal work stands. They were very nice, nice, kind of yeah, nice kind of work set up there. But I would have these dreams. I had all kinds of dreams when I was working at that place. I think it was just stressful or something. But anyway, I had this dream of this child was up on the work stands, and that kind of freaks you out when you're like, there's so many ways you could fall off of that thing, get hurt. And the irony is, same kind of thing. It's like that their design. The whole point is that they got all these rails and safety features and stuff, but like at the end of the day, they're still just these crazy contraptions. Okay, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna save that shadow color. In fact, let me just go up and just, whoops, wrong color there. I'll do a little swatch here. That's our shadow color. All right, now I'm just gonna grab that color, fix this dome a bit here. All of this, I think with just like a nice clean stroke, we can kind of get that shape worked out a little better. All right, then this pipe has a little bit more light on it. Let me get those lined up. And let's see, what else do we need? I think we can bring in some, light side rails here. And on the bright side, the weather here is really turning, which is just wonderful. Yeah, in New York, Western New York area, and March, April, coming into May, that can be a rough time to be in the Northeast because you want it to be nice, and it teases you. It's like, hey, look, you got a 65-degree day. And then it snows, And so anyway, once you finally get through all that, it is wonderful. Let me know if you're from a warmer area. Do you miss it at all? Do you miss, I know some people from California who are like all about snow, how wonderful it is. And that's kind of crazy to me, but don't get me wrong, I get all the warm and fuzzies at the first snowfall, around Thanksgiving time. It's like Christmas is coming. Let's make this all as wonderful as it can be. But then that whole drive to make things as good as they can be, you kind of lose it. It's about March for me. That's about the time where it's muddy, icy, just can't decide what it wants to be. And so, anyway, I'll stop harping on that. But message retracted. Okay. Just looking at that in the chat. I trust whomever's judgment. I'm going to bring in some little darker areas. I'm going to go just a skosh darker. Get that recess in a little tighter there, and then we'll bring in some of those details. Do a little bit of that in here, get that kind of occlusion right in those corners. Let's see, I'm going to start bringing in some little smaller forms in here. And tighten this up. Okay, this light here that comes down, sweeps over here. So there's like I think this object right here is casting a shadow like this. So it gets all that in shadow down there. And then there's this smoke that's coming up. We'll do that later, but that is casting a shadow in here. I'll go ahead and paint that shadow. So it's like that across these forms. And some of that comes down across like this. Oh, and this is actually kind of interesting. This whole platform here seems to cast a shadow like that. All right. Now we've got this. This is a separate form here, so we'll start to break those apart a little more. Maybe we don't need this occlusion here so strongly right there, so I'll just pop those out. And then there's little bits here that come off. You know, the form kind of extends. Well, actually, that's kind of curious. I'm not sure how far this is from the rest of it. Okay. All right, let's adjust this one here. Tighten that up. It does have a platform up there, but I'm going to diminish that a bit. It's not such a big deal. All right, what else do we have? We got some of these forms in here. I do feel like it is time to do some more tanks, though. Oil tanks. Actually, that being said, I've been doing these VR sketches in Gravity Sketch. That's the name of the application. And did a couple tanks in there. Really enjoying that process. So we shall see what comes of that. It would be nice to get a nice streamlined process that's really enjoyable in that VR experience, you know. Okay, this actually has like an undercut in there. Bring this light over. I have this object here, cast a shadow. So now we're cutting in some of these light shapes. This is what I was talking about earlier. You know, showing form through where a shadow falls. So it's partly, I guess, what you'd call shading, and that is the light on the object. And then there's shadows, which would be like cast shadows. That would be light obscured by the object. That, you know, those shadows then fall on other forms. Oops, sorry. I just pulled out my. I just pulled the nib right off of my. Stylus. What was I saying? So okay, so the light of the kind of the shadow on the form itself, the shadow cast from it. And there was another thing I was going to go. Oh, and then the light in front of those shadows. So again, like so, let's say we did. Well, I guess we could do this right here. So if we go in here and we're gonna clean up this catwalk here, and I don't know that we really want to get it this detailed because I think it would make more sense for it to be a little looser. Okay, but so here this would be like. The underside is going to be darkest, then the side plane gets a little bit of bounce light, and then the top planes are going to get you know, this lighter color, and so that's like the shadows on the form, and then the shadows cast by the form. Well, we've already got that here. We could cast some shadows from like this. There's like a railing there, and it looks, in the reference, it looks like it kind of casts, down here, mostly. And then we block those shadows. We bring it back in, our light over top of that. And so these are these little cues that give you form in a composition. That may seem like super simple, and it is, but it is true, right? So if we have a shadow shape, let's say we're going to adjust our light a little bit, so the shadow from this rail comes through here like this, and then these rails like that, right? And then if we paint these light values back in, so that it shows that those are behind. It's just overlapping shape, right? Now, of course, this isn't actually in the reference, but I'll do this to illustrate. Now we've made this separation from where these rails lie, so these rails aren't just sitting on the surface of this object here. They come out a little bit towards us. Alright, now if I zoom out, it's probably going to look terrible. Because it's not. I want to kind of obscure it so that that's not so tight in there. Alright, let's do a little bit more here. Oops. Bring in some, you could almost call it hashing kind of marks. Bring some of those in here. Alright, and then we'll paint in, well, let me do just a few more little fiddly bits in here. Just get the, kind of that 1, 2, 3 read. You get the large forms, mid forms. And now we're working on the kind of smaller details. Get those in there. I want to be careful not to get too heavy with these, like that right there. We're adding these little details in, but like I don't want that. It's not that important to the image, right? In fact, they're not really important at all. It's just really kind of establishing scale and just a little bit of a reference for, what are these things down here? These are like actually little, buildings, and you can put kind of like the doors and so forth on there to give you this sense of scale. But then I just don't want to draw the eye there, really, so I'm going to be a little careful with that. Do a ladder here, and then I'm going to just hold shift and do that because I kind of enjoyed freehanding a lot of this, but that's a pretty long straight line that I don't feel like doing. Unassisted. Sorry, getting lazy, getting weak. Actually, on that note, hey, Adonis, I just saw you in the chat there. Thanks for joining in, Adonis. Man, you are the faithful stream watcher. I appreciate it. Hopefully you're getting something out of it. Right, so I was saying, on the note of, like, I just said, well, I mean, jokingly said that I was getting lazy because I, used shift to get a straight line rather than just painting a straight line. So, I think we kind of touched on this last week when I was talking with Andrew Sides, which, by the way, go back and check that one out. We did a joint stream together. There's some technical things I got to figure out with that. I don't know that it was very easy to follow with the split screen. I don't know if kind of like a bouncing, whoever's talking, jumping back and forth, if that would just be too distracting. But let me know what you guys think about that, and we'll work it out for the next iteration of the guest artist thing. But anyway, that being said, last week we were talking about a little bit about photo bashing and that sort of thing, and I wanted to clarify that it kind of depends what the end result is, or what the end user is after, right? So if you're just doing this for yourself, that's one thing. If you're doing it for a client, that's another. And what the end user finds value in is really important to answering that question, right? Like, if the value is in just like a quick turnaround, then who cares if you did it all yourself, like I tied my own shoes. Like, if I had a machine that tied my shoes, or if I could just wear Velcro like an old man or something, why not? What's wrong with that? But if it's if this thing is a personal project, you're doing it for your growth, you want to get something out of it. You want to know that you contributed, made decisions. There's a different kind of art there. Like, when someone enjoys your art because there was a certain amount of difficulty that was required in order to make it. If that's what the end user wants, then you have to. I'm not saying you have to accommodate, but if that's what you're aiming for, then consider that if the appeal in your work is the mastery over a medium, then that's what the appeal is. If the appeal is simply the idea, or the finished image, or in concept art, it's mostly like you got the idea across, and so the team can work from that. Or if you got enough detail to clarify the form, to clarify the idea, then that's the value. That's the end target, and that's different than I want to grow, I want to master a medium. That's a different thing, and I think that's legitimate too. And so I don't want to lose sight of that. That it's legitimate both to do quick work and do it in a way that is not stuck by your own pride, of like, well, I did it myself, I did it my way. Well, there are some contexts in which that just doesn't matter, and I've already I think I beat that dead horse in what those contexts are. But then there's separate context in which it does matter, in which whether or not your hand made that mark, and you could do that whether you had Photoshop or whether you had a stick in the mud. That's a different target. And so I think for me personally in my work, I want to do work that is challenging to me, and that forces me to take on a certain level of mastery over the medium. And maybe there's an element of pride in that, that's like unhealthy. But I think it can be unhealthy the other way as well. I think it can be unhealthy to say, well, it doesn't really matter. If you like take it over to another medium, maybe, like music or something. If you said, well, it doesn't matter whether or not I can sing, if I can auto-tune it, or it doesn't really matter if I wrote that song, if it sounds good. It's like, well, I think from the outside, we, if we're not in those fields, and certainly have opinions about that. Like, no, I actually want to know that you are talented. I actually want to listen to a singer whose, voice is enjoyable and impressive, or whose music, lyrically is thought-provoking and is from their own soul, right? And not just like, I don't know, if you hire a writer, I'm not really sure how that whole field works, but if you can hire a writer to just come up with something that is probably going to sell well, right? That's different. That serves a different need. I think there's probably, I'm not in that field, so I don't really know, but there probably is a legitimate place for those things. And then there's a place where that's not the appeal. Okay, I think I've beaten that to death, but just wanted to clarify that I'm not saying there's like a right or a wrong way to paint. I'm also not saying that production methods are taking the soul out of it, or that you ought to work that way because that's the fastest and best. You get a quick result, and that's what the customer wants. So do what the customer wants. Like, well, you kind of get a vote in all this, right? Like, you're the one producing the work. So if you're doing it in a way that is completely soulless and unfulfilling to you, then see if there's a market for something you really want to do, the way that you want to do it. I don't know. It's a balancing act, because there's, like I said, there's pride in there, and pride can screw up a lot of things. But I think that there's also a healthy desire for excellence, and that's something else. And that, I think, moves the ball forward in terms of, even the industry and all the stuff that, demands that you maybe do things a certain way, or maybe take some shortcuts or whatever. Actually, that was a point that Andrew brought up that I thought was really good. That there are these shorthand type things. It's like you figure out your own shortcuts, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing for a while, and then at some point you outgrow it. And I was thinking about this kind of in a different context, that like you want to be in a group or you want to be maybe working at a company that you pick up new things and you desire to grow. But the thing with growth is that eventually you outgrow wherever you are. And I think we just need to maybe, come to terms isn't really maybe the right term, but like recognize that, realize that that's kind of how it goes. If you want to keep working and improving, you're going to outgrow some things. And I think the most obvious examples of that for me are like styles that I was really interested in, or artists whose work I really loved. And I think I mentioned this last week as well, that like Goro is one of these artists that I've never outgrown. Like he keeps pushing things forward, and I really enjoy his work. I liked it very early on, and still to this day, it's just like it's just something. He has a charm to it, and he's pushing, pushing things forward. But there are other artists whose work, or whose, let's say, training or offering was good for a time for me, and then you're just kind of over it. It's just not. Maybe doesn't interest you anymore, or just doesn't strike the same chord, that it used to. And that's normal. That's okay. All right, I'm going to see if I can get a slightly lighter version of this color here, and bring in kind of a lighter detail that slightly obscures this other one back there. Okay, I think we could probably bring some color into this. We've just got a little bit right there, and it's kind of interesting as the only area that has any color in it. But let's see, we could do this as like a multiply. Just bring in that shape there. On the image, it kind of comes around, curves like, I don't know, something like that. Let's see if we can match the curvature and a little bit of the perspective in there. I don't want it to be too diminished as it goes back, but I want to be mindful to do that just a little bit. Alright, so I'm going to erase that out. Here, it doesn't go on any of the railing. This railing here, I could try to detail that out, but I'm just going to go in with the eraser and just kind of rough it up a little bit, make it look like there's some details. Actually, you know what? I need to get those more accurate. That needs to be like straight up and down when I do that, or it's not going to sell the illusion. All right, and then this here cuts off on that edge, and none of this in here is painted. This is a separate object, it would seem. Go ahead and do that all as one stroke. I think that will be, whoops, I'll redo that. I think it'll be much cleaner kind of shape if I can get this to go just one, rather than a whole bunch of choppy cuts at it. Alright, then I am going to lasso these out here. see, do I want to try to clean this up here? I think it would look better. It'd look more like an actual paint job. Come on. So this is one of those things that I was talking about earlier, about like trying to have this level of proficiency where you can do things by hand, you know, getting that curve right. This is one of the things that I had mentioned. I remember we talked about this, Adonis, when we talked a little bit about ways that you can improve, things that you can work on. I talked about this idea of just having, you know, you just do like 2 points. So it's exercise. Where so if you have a point here and a point here, and you see if you can just hit those with one stroke. You know, you might have to, you know, shadow stroke a little bit, and then you see if you can just hit those, and then do 3 points, and see if you can get a nice, you know, curve between those points. And that's much trickier, especially on digital. You know, I'm working on Intuos here. This is a little bit easier on paper, I think. So if you're, you know, looking at these 3, oops, brush size, there we go. These 3 points here, so we could go, you know, try to hit the hit them directly, but then try to get a curve, smooth curve between those points. So obviously I could use a little work there, but the more you practice that, the more accurate you'll be. So when you're looking at this and you go, okay, I want to go from here down to here. I actually don't really like how this curve turned out, but like, let's suppose we're wanting to correct that. So I'll take this little more teal color here, and I want this nice smooth arc, right? So if I'm going from this edge to here to down here, right? So this is one of those areas where, yeah, you can work on that exercise and get nice smooth arcs, and then you could do this in your pencil drawings as well. All right, so I'm actually just going to merge. I'll merge those down. Well, let's see. It's the wrong color. Here, erase this out. Here, erase this out here, and through here. Now, I think the correct way to do this, if you were going to do it quickly and quietly, you know, for like client work, would just be to use your marquee tool, get your ellipse, you know, make an ellipse, you know, wherever you need it. Then, you know, you could delete that out. But we're doing things the long way today. Okay, something like that. I'm going to grab a few of these areas here. So I'm going to take these two, group them, make a mask, and now we're going to paint in the mask, the white, rather the black of the mask here, and just get some of these little rails and stuff in here. Get those reestablished. Obviously the spacing is a little bit off. think that should help. And then we'll do it. Actually, I might just move this whole thing. Yes, no, yes, a little bit yes, a little bit no. All right, let's get that smoke in. We had this, or steam rather. There's this steam coming in up here. We have that shadow there. And there's this. It's kind of interesting. It shifts again. Talking about how colors shift. It shifts over to this almost purple blue here. We go just a little bit more subtle with that. And we'll bring that up in value for the transition. And then we'll give these kind of sharp shapes at the bottom here to imply that these are, this is a man-made kind of building in front here, but then the atmospheric effect is behind it. Let me zoom in on that and maybe clean up those shapes a little bit. So if we just go, let's see. And then delete that. And then in our reference image, I think some of this is a bit brighter. So like right here, I'm just gonna erase out a little bit of this shadow. All right, I think we can bring in some, just a little bit of warm and cool in here. So we've got, actually, if we're going to do this as overlay, I'm going to want this pretty close to middle gray. Come out a little bit up. Well, maybe we'll keep the value basically the same, but we'll introduce some of this warmth. So there's some warmth down here. It shifts, I think, a little bit over towards orange in this middle area, and it's more maybe towards yellow-green up here. And down in here, there's this really, there's these really not very intense oranges, but much more comparatively to the rest of the scene. Okay, I'm gonna bring some of that gently in there. A little bit up here. And then I think it shifts over, as I was mentioning earlier, kind of shifts more towards yellow as you go to the top. And almost green in this background. We'll go right right there, and we'll probably end up dialing that back more towards yellow. Alright, and now we'll bring in some more neutral but brighter light to bump up the light areas. That's actually perhaps a little too intense. Now, an important thing when you have cast shadows and different local values, like a local color like that, like this blue stripe here, is you got to carry that shadow and that light through all those objects. So, what do I mean by that? Let me just subdue this just a little bit in here, and then I'll get to that. And yeah, so if we're going into our shadow color here, and I guess we'll make this, tempted to make a blue, but I am seeing there's some blue in there, but we'll keep it in this warm area. But anyway, okay, so we're bringing in, bumping up that shadow. So like here where we established this cast shadow before, right here. Now if we're going across different local values, that's going to sell as a shadow, and this is going to separate as a local value by doing that. So as long as you have like this white area has the same shadow being cast, and it falls over the this blue stripe, as long as you carry that right through, like if I'm doing these shadows right here, right, so you should still see these little hash marks here. You should see that come right through and apply to both local values. Okay, that was a long way to say make sure your shadow carries right through all of that. Now it would affect it differently, right? Like your lighter values are going to bounce more light. And so you get a slightly different shadow variance, I guess. I guess this goes back into that whole idea that we were talking about. This was months ago, the halfway to black technique, where your shadow color and your shadow color for a dark tone is not as extreme of a jump as a shadow color for a light tone, if you're using that halfway to black method. Now we have a lot of bounce light, so that's kind of affecting things as well. But you can see here, obviously this shadow is lighter than this shadow because it's lighter local value. Man, it's like the more I talk about it, the less it makes sense what I'm talking about. Alright, I'm going to hop on over to the chat here. 1 second. We talked about the exercise. It was a good talk overall. Hey Eric, what is the art thing you want to improve the most? Okay, I have a list of things that I want to improve. So I would say the most would be putting all the pieces together. And what I mean by that is that I have spent a good portion of my career doing concept art that is objects or portraits, or it's like explain this thing visually. I mean, that's basically the idea every time. And that is different than illustration, where you explain a story and the interactions between things. So that, to me, I think has more depth to it. I mean, I think the same is true in most fine art as well. That, if you're just doing an object, this is a piece of pottery, or a painting of flowers or something. That's different than extending that to the relationship between things and telling more of a story. And I think story seems to sell better because that's kind of how we're wired. Like we tell stories with each other, and we listen to stories, and we learn through them. And it's like, it's not, if I just told you, like, here's a moral principle, that's totally different than if you see it acted out in, like, The Lord of the Rings or something. Sorry, I just hit my mic. If you watch the movie, then you get this sense of, like, loyalty and betrayal and responsibility. It's like this ring came to him and he wishes he never had it, and all this kind of stuff. It's like, well, the story is what sells all those ideas. You could just tell somebody, like, if you had to sacrifice yourself to, you know what I mean, like, whatever the moral is, like, it doesn't work to just blurt it out. You have to act it out. You have to see it. You have to see somebody live it. And I think the same is true with art in general. That, like, I mean, there is value in just seeing, like, this thing is beautiful, right? Or this thing is interesting. But, like, if you can sell that in a story, then you've got something that connects with people in a completely different way. And so I would say that is the art thing that I would love to take further. If I had to pick just one thing, I'd say the storytelling, putting all the pieces together so that the little cloud type atmospherics that I like to paint, and the scenes that I like to paint, the characters that I like to goof around with, all come together into something that connects with the audience on a deeper level. That's the thing that I want to focus on. Now, as far as, like, little technique things, there's a lot of I have a lot of notes on, like, things that I fall back on. So actually, this is a good exercise for yourself. If you're trying to analyze what do I need to do with my work, then look at your work and look at what you do all the time. because that will be easy to figure out. It'll be easy to see what am I doing every time, rather than what am I missing, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. That's the unfortunate nature of any kind of technical work. Is like you think you've got it, and then you find out that there was something that you were missing, right? And so it's I wouldn't say impossible to figure those things out, but it's difficult to just on your own figure out, like, oh, I had this missing. There was this way I could have been thinking about things that would have helped me improve. But what you can do is you can look at what you're doing all the time, and you can see, like, okay, well, music again as an example. It's like if you just keep hitting these same scales all the time, it's like I'm trying to improvise, but really I'm just going up and down the scale. It's like you can recognize that, you can see that, and I think you can see the same thing in art. Not that music isn't art, but like in your visual art. If you're like, okay, every time I go to make a character, I start with a circle. I mean, that's literally something that I used to do. It's like it was just a habit of start by making a curve, whatever. Or every time that I want to explain a form, I light it a certain way, right? So these are things that you can start to recognize in your work when you ask those questions. What am I doing all the time? And then what I would recommend is you can ask, is there another way to do it? What is the purpose of that? Is it, so if throwing down a circle and then kind of building something off of a sphere is the way that I kind of autopilot start making characters or start making designs, then what purpose does that serve? Well, it gives me a base. I get something on the paper so that I can respond to it rather than just trying to pull something out of thin air. I mean, I think that's a valid assessment of why we do stuff like that. Like why we just we'll just scribble and then, like, okay, that could be something. It's like easier to build off of something that you see and correct it than it is to just like kind of come up with it in your head, right? Anyway, so then you ask yourself, okay, well, that's the purpose that it serves. Is there another way to accomplish that? And I think you could come up with a whole bunch of different solutions. You could do ink blots, or you could actually, one thing I used to do that helped me kind of break out of that was I would draw on thin paper with ink that would bleed through. And then after it bled through, I would draw on those papers, on the bleed through, just to have like, okay, here's a base of just something, right? It's like when you draw, like, when you have a piece of paper like this. So here's your margins of your paper, and maybe you've got a stack of papers. You've got other papers underneath like this. And then I would just draw on top of that, like, I don't know, let's say we're doing a little smiley face here, right? But then when you remove this paper, and you're just left with this one down here, right? So then now you've got that mark on the next piece that you're working from. Okay. So maybe that's not the greatest example, but I'm trying to like visualize what it is, so I'm not just explaining it and it gets lost in translation. So then now you're starting with this, and you've got this mark on the page. That's like from whatever paper was over top of it. You went over the edges, and it would often, you can shift those papers around and stuff as you're working, and you're still making a real image on your first pass. It's not like you're doing it just to just to make a mess, though you could. But then what you end up with is like all these little marks that have these, it's like a sharp edge and then it like trails off or whatever. And that would happen a lot because you're using that surface, that paper underneath whatever you're working on, and then it, your pre-existing, your last drawing is kind of acting as a mask. And then you end up with all these little like marks like that, And so that would be a way for me to like break out of that. I always start with a certain mechanical hand gesture. So now I'm starting with something that was like random, that I didn't like plan it, I didn't orchestrate it. Yeah, okay, so I guess that's an example, but that's one way to analyze in your work. Am I just on autopilot and that's the problem? Like I need to figure out what I'm doing all the time so that I can start to pursue other avenues. Like I think that's a legitimate question to ask. Okay, what I did here is I just came in with a lighter color. So I just selected this. The layer mode the blend mode is lighter color. And I'm just coming in and correcting how I want this blue to show up. And let me adjust it over here as well, so it's not so intense. Oh, that was a little excessive. It's a good question. What is the next art thing to improve? Yeah. So a couple other things that I have on my list are like slices of light. That's something that I just forget. Like I just jump in and just start doing whatever, and I don't often plan the most flattering way to light something, and that's pretty important. This, for example, maybe we could come up with some different ideas here, right? And I'm going to make no guarantees on this because I'm just admitting that this is something that I would like to improve on. So let's see. Let's go. Oops. Let me get that. There we go. Something like that. All right. Let's say we want to do like a low light. So let's do. I don't really want to do overlay. I guess we'll do darker color. We'll get our shadow color, and let's say the sun is very low, and a lot of this would be blocked down here. I'll bring this up just a little bit, and I'll start to shift it into these kind of warmer tones here. And I like that transition right there. There's something going on here that's pleasant. It's nice. Something nice about that. And if we're coming to the side and we're going to have less of this, roundness here, it's going to be more kind of direct. And so we'll start bringing that in like this. Go a little lighter with that. Get this side in shadow. Smoke will be a little bit a little redder. Pick up more of that color from the sun. Okay, so that's one way we can do it. Maybe we'll lower that effect a little bit there. Let's go. Multiply, color burn. But I actually only want this to apply. I don't want it to apply to that fill behind everything. So I'm going to group everything together and do one of those numbers. And let's see, color burn. Let's bring the fill down. Somewhere in there. Let's do a different color fill. There's something going on here. I don't know if that's our is that our overlay? What's doing that? This guy, lighter color. So we'll clean that up a little bit. And what's doing it here? Overlay. I think what would also be appropriate in this case would be a color balance that addresses the light and a little more warmth. I don't like how it's increasing the brightness of it though. Do our midtones. And then we'll make our shadows a little bluer. Don't like what that's doing to the value, so we'll just go to hue or color. It's tricky. It's a tricky one. So I think that everything needs to kind of darken up a bit. There we go. That's closer to what I wanted. And do we want those pinned? we'll have to control this background value here. Maybe closer to gray. I'm gonna go bluer, grayer. Maybe we'll go into the reds, see what happens. I think it needs like a gradient, you know, so it goes from, so you can see this blue is going to be in the sky color, but there's kind of a gray towards the horizon, maybe. Something like that. What if we do it the opposite way? What will happen? I think we need to mask off that bottom. Whoops, no, not that, this. There we go. All right, so what's working better, this or that? Kind of think I prefer that. Yeah. Oh, we'll let you stay just a little bit. Might move you up. And smudge you. Because that's how we roll. Yeah, I feel like that needs to be like finished out some way, you know, like so you sample and we just start. Carry some of these things through. And some of these shadows back here that I have, you know, they wouldn't work like that, right? Because we changed the lighting situation. And you guys can go away right there. What is that? What layer is that on? What have I done? There we go. Okay, but then I think I could carry in, so if I'm continuing with this lighting scheme, and I could take this, you know, color here, maybe neutralize it just a little bit, and then bring it in the background here. I'm going to show that maybe these are above that, you know, fall off on the horizon where. The sun is just coming down to the horizon, and so these areas are not, rather the lower side of it is obscured. Man, what is this guy saying? Maybe we'll bring some of these like up in here. show the separation. I don't even know what I'm doing at this point. All right, let me zoom out here. All right, so we could do a completely different lighting setup. And this would make a whole lot more sense to do in a thumbnail form. But I guess for sake of demonstration, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference to me. So this is what we did, right? We added in this darker color to lower the light at the base, added in a color burn, a color balance set to color, and then a multiply set to color, or color balance set to multiply. And this actually probably could be diminished a little bit too. I like it in the light, so it does. It brings that down in value in a nice way, but I don't think it needs to be that extreme. I'm just going to duplicate that, keep it, well, okay, kind of like that. Oh man, I'm a sucker for saturated saturated color. All right, let's do this, and then what I'm going to do here, even though it's probably going to crash, I'm going to have it not interact with the darker part here. We'll decide where that cutoff needs to be. I think that works. And then we can bring this down. That's nothing. A little more, a little more. I don't know. I think I need more time with this. To really get that to feel right. But something like that. Okay, now let's do a different light setup. So we'll take all this and duplicate it. This is, what do we call this? Evening. And we'll hide that. And then we got our other setup here. So actually, I'm going to include all of this background stuff in evening as well. Whoops. Wrong group. There we go. And then we'll hide that one. So here's our original. Let's do some changes to this one. Let's see, how would we want to light this one? What if we change the direction of the light? So that it's like over here and like towards us. So this would be casting a shadow here. Side, it would be lit, as the cool kids say. I don't know. I don't think any of the kids are saying that anymore. Who is this guy? Lit. Cool kids. What's he talking about? Okay. Oh boy. Yeah, okay. Alright, so we're going to knock out those values. Get these shadows to line up there. We'll get them a little darker near the nearer to the tower, and then we'll bring in those lighter values again to give us that illusion of space. Alright, I'm going to reverse a lot of these shadows here, so we'll put them on the other side. That one back in there. The shadow right there, and then on the inside of that. And this is where they're saying, man, why don't you just make this a 3D model? Then you just move the light, and it's done. Okay, and then we gotta carry this up. Oh, and this actually gives us a great opportunity to show the curvature of this form here. So this is like this, right? Follows that curve. And I guess this is where, you know, thinking about how lighting flatters the form is important, right? Like, what is it about this form that we want to show off? And if it's that dome shape, then, you know, maybe we cast shadows over it to accentuate that curvature up there. I guess we gotta bring this light in here. These are lit and not, it's lit. They're lit up there and not in shadow. And then our shadow would be on this far side back here. Maybe just a little bit, maybe catching just a little there, just a little up there, and then we'll bring some of this lighter value back in. This would all be light in here, with, of course, you know, shadows within it. We'll just kind of mock that up. Then we got our shadow side on this side now. The light's coming down here, so then this casts a shadow like this. Across that form, bring our shadows in over here and here, all through there. And then we switch all these. These have light right here. Oop. I think there are many a seasoned artist will be watching this part and going, yeah, you know what? I'm good. I don't have to watch you flip all of the lighting direction. All right, but then all these, little dark areas here, these would be lit, right? Okay, and then maybe our smoke, which we've got, or steam, whatever is coming up here, and that's picking up some light. But maybe as it comes onto this far side here, it gets less light, and it's kind of the density of the smoke. So then we see it lit here, but as it gets farther away from us, it gets, whoops. That might be too intense. Too much going on there. Shadow back in. We have some of this area in obscurity there. It's just getting too much light is being blocked, so it's a little bit, bump that shadow just a little bit in there. Okay, so that's a different light setup, right? Let's duplicate that. So then let's compare these. We'll go like this. Grab that. Okay, you go up there. And then may as well keep all that, I guess. And okay, got another one. And then we do our evening light. So one of the things that was pointed out to me that I do all the time is that I tend to keep my horizon line at the same level. And that's something to consider. Okay, do I want to am I doing that on autopilot, or is there a a reason why I'm choosing these different views, Oops. I could probably pump the color up on those for sure. maybe do curves on it. I think that also needs a color balance. And with this, we'll see if something strikes me as interesting, but what I'm thinking about here is really just getting the white to actually balance to white, like a true white balance. Okay. Oh, that's kind of cool. Cool. What is this guy talking about? What is he even saying? Doesn't make any sense. Midtones, highlights. What's it gonna be today? Okay, let me zoom in on these. I'll get an idea what's going on. So I think they all kind of bring their different feel. So I like these two bottom ones here. But I think that the top one shows more three-dimensionality. Like just having that cast shadow on the form there. And we could probably do more with that. Like, for example, what did I just do? All right, there it is. So if we had this object here is casting a shadow on the object behind it, you know, that might help, right? So if we have this here like that, and all this stuff is in shadow, maybe we'll just set this to darker color so we don't lose all those details. So we have the lights coming in like this, so we're just going to hit like that. And we'll erase this out. And then so now we actually have kind of a complex form to figure out, where, or complex shape. So this form is casting a shadow onto another shadow, or this dome is casting a dome-shaped shadow onto another dome. So it's a curved shadow that is falling on another curve. I think I would just have to see reference to do that right. But we'll bring this steam thing back in here. Bring that up and above. Bring that curved shadow in a little bit. Okay, so that's a little change that adds just a little bit more dimensionality to it. Yeah, this is something that I think I could spend a bit more time working out, like which ideas have more merit in terms of the overall feeling that I'm going for with these. And I guess, you know, when you start out with no real plan in that regard, then you get to cheat a little bit. You know? I suppose you're allowed to change the plan midway. You know, as long as it's a personal piece. It's not like you're stuck with you have to do it a certain way, or it has to tell a certain message. You know, you can change that. Oops. Get that a little cleaned up. And a lot of this in here, I just done whatever, you know, just kind of blocking something in here. So this could all be done with more intention. Okay, I think that completes that a little bit more. Okay, I think I'll probably stop here. I would have liked to have done a few other reference images, but we got off on things that could be improved, and I think it's worthwhile to do these things. I don't stop and think about these things enough, right? I don't stop and think, is this really flattering to the form? Is this really telling the story that I want to tell in the best way? Or am I just describing the shapes of the things that you would see? And, I love adding that drama and that feeling to it, but I shouldn't say it has to, but there's more to it, right? There's more to it than just explaining the forms correctly. otherwise, a camera can do that job. And so I think it's our responsibility to bring the artistry into it. Okay, I'm gonna do just a little bit of a curves here, I think, over the whole thing, just to bump the contrast. This could just be kind of reckless, but I'm just looking at this and thinking, yeah, I've been staring at this long enough that you sometimes get eye strain or fatigue to where you're not really thinking about the values that you're seeing. Oh, that's right. Okay, that makes sense. I'm like, why is this not changing this layer? Well, because it's above everything. There we go. Okay. I don't know, that could be tweaked forever, but let's just call it here. All right. So a couple variations on a subject, lighting variations on it. Good conversation, I think. Thanks for chiming in the chat. There's some good questions there. I'm gonna end it here. As always, if you're watching these, bring your own project along and be working on that. Be sketching, be doodling, painting, whatever. I think there's all different ways, legitimate ways to work. If you are just working with a mechanical pencil and like a small sketchbook, or like working with Copic markers, or whether you're painting digitally or traditionally, these are all ways that you're getting that thing in your head down into something tangible and visible, and that's the discipline, right? So I would just encourage you, don't forget that part, right? It's cool to watch, it's cool to think about all the things you could try, but like, just do it, just try it. So all right, with that little bit of encouragement, we're going to end it here. Have a good night.